So it is being live streamed. Let me share my screen.
So will this particular stream be available after the class?
No, right now also you can watch the stream instead of watching this, but it's better to do this here because you can ask questions, etc. Yeah, this particular stream you can view it anytime you want later after the class. I have on the Moodle page, I have added the links to the playlist. Yeah, have you all seen the Moodle page yet?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Moodle page, you will see that I have a. So now I'll share screen. So if you go to the Moodle page, you will see that. Why is it saying where it is? Yes, so this is the Moodle page. So now you know how to go to Moodle also. You go moodle.cmi.ac.in and under you will first see all the math courses, then the computer science courses. September to November 2021, you will see introduction to program. And I see that there are 86 participants who have already registered in this. Yes. So at the beginning, I have here the YouTube playlist. I have a link for that. So you can always go there and watch all the videos. They will be available after this thing. So here I have basic instructions on how to install GHC on your various machines. You can try to consult this. If you need more details, we'll get the TAs to help you out. Okay. Okay, good. So let me just start the lecture for today. Okay, so today I'll try to use the terminal to show you how the basic tool works rather than trying Visual Code, because with Visual Studio Code, of course, it's all nifty and everything is in one place, but you might not necessarily grasp what I'm doing because it goes fast. So go to the directory. So in the previous class, we were looking at this, and at some point, I think I went over too quickly towards the end. So let us just, we were looking at all this, right? So we were looking at the distinction between how do you write functional programs versus how do you write programs in a normal language like C or whatever. You might write, if somebody asks you to compute the sum of numbers from 1 to n in a language like C, you might do this. The main thing is that you have this thing called total, which is being repeatedly modified. Okay, so the primary idea is to change the stored value, whereas in a Haskell, in a functional program, you will just write something like this. You have a bunch of functions that you compose one on top of the other, just like in mathematics. And here, this dot dot within the square brackets, this writing the square brackets and stuff inside, that itself is a syntactic sugar for some function. We'll later learn what that function actually is. Okay, that's a proper function that you can write that forms the list from 1 to n and sums elements in a list. Okay. Yeah, so I see there are chat messages. If it's a message that is meant for me, and if I am not answering immediately, please unmute yourself and ask me. Okay, I might not see all the questions in chat immediately. Okay, right. So, for instance, if I sum up to 5, it is nothing but applying sum on the list 1 dot dot 5, which is just sum of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which expands to this, which is 15. And we were saying that Haskell is a yeah, so we are just going through some basics of how to define functions in Haskell. So you write a function name and the type. Okay, what are the types of the arguments and what is the type of the result? Okay, here int is the type of the argument and int is the type of the result. And this is the rule that tells you what to do. Square of x is nothing but x times x. Okay, it's a simple function. And if you say square of 5, then it is just saying 5 times 5. Okay, so whenever you apply a function to an actual value, you have to go to the function rule and replace the argument name by the actual value that you are applying it to. Okay, so square x equals x star x. So square 5 will be 5 times 5, which is nothing but taking x star x and substituting x with 5. Okay, that is all you need to remember about what it means for a function to run. Okay, for what is the meaning of a program? The meaning of a program is just doing substitutions like this. Okay, rather than thinking of some memory where something is stored, something keeps changing, etc. Okay, so you have in Haskell you have basic types. I mentioned all this. We have int as a basic type, for instance. Integer is another basic type. You have all these operations: plus, minus, star, div, mod, etc., etc. Slash, which divides two numbers but produces a real number as a result. Okay, a floating point number as a result, and character, bool, etc., etc. Okay, and then we looked at some basic functions that are operations that are allowed on bool and are not. And you have relational operators on other types that yield values of type bool. So if you check whether 5 equals 3, you will get false, which is a Boolean value. If you check 5 slash equal to, which stands for not equal to 3, you will get true, which is a Boolean value. And similarly for the other operators. Okay, you can check not just integers, but you can also check whether the character A equal to the character B. Okay, then of course it will return false. And yeah, so you can define functions with multiple arguments, and the way you would define it is like this. You have to state every argument and then put arrows in between. And here, this is the type, and this is here is the rule. You're saying XOR of B1, B2 equals B1 and not B2, or not B1 and B2. We'll figure this out and write this in GHCA in a bit. You can also have 3 arguments. So you have 3 ints: int, arrow, int, arrow, int, arrow, bool. Okay, so you express each one of the types of the arguments, put arrows in between them, and finally put an arrow and write the result type. Okay, so is ordered XYZ, checks whether X, Y, and Z have been presented to you in order. So X is less than or equal to Y and Y is less than or equal to X. That is what you're checking. Here, the relational operator returns a truth value, true or false. This relational operator also returns true or false. And then this AND combines the two truth values to produce another value. Okay, so if it's true and true, it will be true. Otherwise, it will be false. And then
excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I had a doubt.
Yes.
Sir, how does that Haskell program know which one is the inputs and which one is the output? I mean, all were just written with an arrow.
Yeah, the one after the last arrow is the output.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So then we said that Haskell is characterized by so some of the features is that you can write very concise programs. You've seen that already. So in the case of, but we will see other examples also now. So most often just the mathematical definition, if you just put an equal to and you write it in the Haskell syntax. Somebody, Shakti, was saying he doesn't understand what syntax means. Syntax just means language or whatever words are permitted in the language, words, symbols, etc. that are permitted in the language. Okay, that is what you mean by syntax. Okay, for instance, we will see examples of that in a bit. Okay, in Haskell you will write and is written like this in Haskell. In some other languages you might write it in English, A and D. Okay, that would mean the logical and. In some other languages you might write and like in some books where you put a forward slash followed by a backward slash. Okay, so you have various things like that. For instance, so that's what you mean by syntax. Okay, some languages will have int etc. in capital I. Some languages will have type names starting with small letter. Okay, these are all what we call details of syntax. Okay, syntax means just the grammar or whatever of the language, what is allowed and what is not allowed. Okay, does the order of the type declarations matter? Yes. So right, very true. If x is int, y is bool, and z is float, you have to write int arrow bool arrow float, not the other way around. Yes, other orders will not work. Okay, good. We'll come to all that. So you can write concise programs. You have a powerful type system which allows something called polymorphism. You can use lists, which are a very convenient data structure, and you can use list comprehension, which is a very nifty notation, which is very close to mathematics that we'll see in a couple of slides. Recursive functions, something called higher order functions. We'll see all this. Lazy evaluation, using which you can do lots of powerful things. There are lots more features, but we'll focus on these things. Okay. Yes. So let us look at recursive functions. For instance, here is an example of recursive function. Ignore this first line for the moment. That is just an illustration of how the type system is very flexible. What this tells you is that as long as, so what the first line is indicating is that you can use the same code that we have written below to add. You can use this one, you define the function once, and you can use it to add to form the sum of lists of any numeric type whatsoever. You can add, you can do sum of list of integers, you can do sum of list of floats, you can do sum of list of doubles, etc. etc. There are lots of types that you think of as numeric types. Okay, ints, integer, float, double, rational, etc. etc. These are all what are called numeric types. What is a numeric type? A numeric type is a type of objects on which you can do a certain operations, a certain set of operations, plus, star, I don't know, divides, etc. etc. Okay, so this is just to illustrate to you that Haskell allows you this power that you can at the same time write one single function and apply it in multiple cases. Okay, but if you don't understand this for now, you don't need to understand it. I'm not going to assume that you will understand this. For the rest of lecture 1, an understanding of this types at this level of intricacy is not needed. But I'm just.
Is it like some function signature?
Does num define the real field? I don't know. It's not the real field, but yeah, it applies to integer also. But integer is a little more specialized. Okay, so num is one kind of this thing. We'll come to all that later. Okay, let's not. I'm sorry I mentioned this. It has a potential to get sidetracked on this. Yes, somebody had a comment or a question. Somebody just said something now. Yes, so num is collectively float, int, and others. Yeah, sure. Somebody is saying Ishan. So if you have a comment, please. Sometimes just because it appears a little disjointed, if you write it on the chat, and if I answer verbally, so maybe I should just close the chat for now. If you have anything immediate to ask me, you just ask me. I'll only periodically check the chat from now on. Okay. So anyway, yes.
I had it out. Like, what does the last line mean? Like in this program.
In this program here, I am
Yes,
just saying that sum of x colon x's means a list x followed by x's. So you can think of a list as a set. Okay, but you are allowed repetitions. there is a certain order, etc. You can have an empty set or a non-empty set. A non-empty set means non-empty list. Okay, a list can be empty or non-empty. If it is empty, there is nothing at all in it. If it is non-empty, there is a first element and there is the rest of the list. Okay, that is what this pattern means. So this also illustrates to you something called pattern matching. So you are trying to say that the input is either of two patterns. Either it is the empty list or it is some element followed by a list of other elements. So that is what this thing means. In that case, all you need to do is x plus apply the sum function recursively on the rest of the list. Okay, this is the recursion.
So XS is a list.
XS is a list. Yes, XS is a list. X is the first element of the list. XS is the rest of the list, which will be another list. Yeah. So you build lists by starting from empty list, adding an element in front of it, that will form a new list. Add an element in front of that, that will form another list, etc. etc. We'll come to all that later, but I'm just telling you that this is the level of concise programs that you can write. Okay, rather than write total equals 0 and then keep modifying total, etc. etc. This is all you need to write. You are just writing out the mathematical definition. Okay. Oh, what if I have an empty list of elements? The sum is 0. What if I have one element followed by some other elements? Okay, it is this element plus the sum of the rest. Okay, that's all. Yeah. Right. And in computation, you don't, again, there is no stored variable, there is no value stored somewhere, it being changed, etc. etc. Sum of 1, 2, 3 is nothing but 1, 2, 3, the list 1, 2, 3 itself should be thought of as 1 followed by the list 2, 3. So if you follow this rule, 1 followed by 2, 3 means it is 1 plus sum of 2, 3. So that is what it is. 2, 3 is 2 followed by sum of 2 followed by 3. So it is 1 plus 2 plus sum of 3. 3 is 3 followed by nothing. So you will write it as 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus sum of nothing. But sum of nothing is 0. So you will replace this by 0 and then you will get 6. Okay. This whole process is called rewriting, and that is all there is. Okay, to running a Haskell program. You write an expression, you write definitions like this, and this is something that somebody asked even earlier. I have 3 lines which say sum, sum, sum. The first line is the type declaration. Ignore that. But the definition of the sum, there are 2 definitions. Okay, one definition for each pattern of input. Okay, so if the input is is of the pattern empty list, then this is the definition that I should follow. If the input is of some other pattern, then this is the definition I should follow. Okay.
Sir, how does Haskell know that you finished defining the function? What if you write more lines? How does it know when to stop?
Oh, you will see that you can stop at any point of time. Yeah, you read the whole file and it will see how many lines there are. What will happen is that if you, for instance, let us say you just wrote the first line and left it at that. Harish?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Then even then it will be okay. Okay, except that sometimes it might give you a warning saying some cases are missing because it is looking for what all input patterns you have written a definition for. Okay, empty you have written, but non-empty you have not written anything. Sometimes it will recognize that and warn you of incomplete. Sometimes you might, after having written this, you might write more. Then at that point, it will warn you of overlapping definitions. You might have 2 definitions, both of which say some x followed by x's, or you will say some y followed by y's. Okay, both are the same pattern, and you might have given the same thing on the right hand side or different things, but it will warn you saying, or sometimes it will give you a compiler error.
Okay.
Saying,
Sir?
Yes.
Hello?
So exactly right. This I should have mentioned. Ishan Verma is asking whether this is the piecewise definition in mathematics. Yes, it is the piecewise definition in mathematics where you will write sum of L is a list equals, and you will write a large left brace and you will put something if something else if something. You will see that you will have other ways of lots of things are piecewise functions. And here it's a very limited kind of piecewise function because the only condition that you are checking is whether the input is of this pattern or of this other pattern. You will see that you can write more complex checks there. Okay, it's all instances of the piecewise functions of mathematics. And further, this is a recursive function. This is both a piecewise function and a recursive function. And as Avinash Rathore mentions, this is a recursive function. The first line is the base case. The second line is the inductive. Okay, good, great.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
The x in access is somehow related to the first x, or is it completely irrelevant?
No, it is completely irrelevant. You can have anything. You can say x colon L also. It is just a name.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, okay. But usually you say x colon access because to remind you that, okay, this is one element, this is multiple elements. Okay, that's all. You could write x colon wise for all compiler will still accept. But somebody who reads it might be a little confused. That's all.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir.
Yes, who is this?
Sir, this is Apratim.
Okay, yes.
Sir, in the second line, for the sum function, we use the square brackets. Then in the third line, we use the parentheses, and then in the end, we didn't use any brackets. So,
Yeah. So this is all syntax. We'll come to that later. When we work on lists, we'll come to that. Okay. This is the syntax for empty list. Okay. This parenthesis you should always put when you give non-trivial patterns. Okay. You have x colon x's, which is a non-trivial expression. If you don't do the parenthesis, it will parse it different. It will interpret it differently. So you should give the parenthesis here. Here you don't need the parenthesis because it's not an expression. It's a single name. Okay, x's is a name. Okay, we'll come to all this later. Okay, so let us not get bogged down.
Sir, is the colon particularly important?
Yes, the colon is particularly important for the lists. But again, like I said, this is just an example. We'll move on. Okay, we'll come back to lists and do it in great detail later. Okay. Here is another thing with lists. This is again to illustrate to you how Haskell programs can be very concise. Okay, I want to sort a list. Sorting means arranging the values in ascending order. Okay, if the list is empty, then there is nothing to do at all. You just say return empty list. Okay, if the list is non-empty, then it is x followed by x's. Then here is one. Here is what if somebody tells you, oh, what does it mean to sort this list? This is what you would say. Oh, you will say first collect all the elements smaller than x, which is this. This is exactly like your set builder notation that you will use in school. Okay, you will say within braces you will put, and then you will say A such that A belongs to something and some other condition. You are all familiar with this, right? Of the set notation. So you'll use braces and say set up all A such that something, various conditions, and you will close the brace. Exactly the same notation you can use except square bracket instead of braces. Okay. So what you're saying is pick out all the smaller elements that are smaller than x. That is A such that A belongs to the list x's and A is less than or equal to x. Pick out all the larger elements such that B belongs to x's, this list, and B is greater than x. Okay, now that you have picked out these two separate things, what do? Sort the smaller elements, sort the larger elements, put x in between. Okay, that's all. Okay, this is what you would say is arranging this thing in sorted order. Now this sort smaller is a recursive call on a smaller list. Sort larger is a recursive call on a smaller list. And this plus plus is an operator that puts together a larger list from smaller lists. Okay. So, yeah. So again, we'll go through this example in great detail later. But is it clear that what I want you to appreciate is that if you have written programming at a BSc level, some of you might be MSc students who would have written sort, etc. Some of you might be school kids who have already done sorting perhaps at school, and you will remember that the algorithms were not particularly simple. Okay, because you have to write multiple loops, you have to figure out what to change, when, where, what to exchange. Yes, do people? I assume
Sir,
that
what is the plus plus?
And you appreciate how complex a task it is. But
Sir, what is the plus plus?
yes, plus plus will take two lists and just put them together in the same order. Yeah, yes. So somebody said picsort. Yes, this is called picsort. But I want you to appreciate how simple it is to write this. Okay, not necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of this. I will not ask you to program this, come up with a program like this on your own at this stage. We'll get there. Okay, so but this is just to illustrate to you the power of Haskell, how it allows you to write programs concisely, programs that are very close to the mathematical definitions that you are going for. Okay, fine. So just as an illustration, so if you want to sort 3, 5, 1, 4, 2, let us say it will first sort the smaller. Smaller is all elements in 5, 1, 4, 2 that are smaller than 3. That is just 1, 2 in that order. So you'll say sort 1, 2 plus plus 3, which is the original list. So you are putting 3 inside a square bracket, which means form a list with only 3 in it. And then sort of the larger elements, which is 5 and 4. So sort of 5, 4. Now sort of 1, 2 is nothing but sort of 1, which is the sort of empty list, because the first element is 1, nothing smaller than 1. So sort of empty list plus 1 plus sort of 2 plus you're expanding the sort of 1, 2. That is this sort of empty list plus 1 plus sort of 2 plus 3, which is the original thing. Sort of 5, 4 is what? 5 is the original element. What are the elements smaller than 5 in the list that follows? Just 4. So sort of 4 plus 5 plus sort of empty list. Okay, there is nothing that is greater than 5. Okay? And eventually this thing will get this portion will get simplified to just 1, 2. Okay, and this portion will eventually get simplified to 4, 5. Okay, and you're putting it all together in that order. This also illustrates what plus plus does. Okay, if you have
Sir,
two
in the
lists,
above
it will just
syntax,
make one list with all the elements in both the lists in that same order.
sir, in the above syntax, in the smaller list, when we write a less than equal to x, that just takes care of the case when the first element is repeated in the list, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay.
okay. So so people, one thing that I want to tell people in the chat room is that realize that people have different backgrounds. So as far as possible, try to realize that some of your classmates might not even know what PicsArt is or have seen it before. So if you want to discuss the intricacies, so maybe you should take it into smaller groups perhaps. Okay, I am fine with it, but some of your classmates might feel intimidated by it and not tell you. Okay, so just realize that if you have, it is good to have interesting discussions, but just make sure that you don't get too intricate. Okay, if you want to discuss lots of intricacies, you can break into smaller groups. Also, I noticed that in the chat some people are bad both in maths. I'll please remember that I'll take note of your names and I'll take appropriate action. Okay, so okay.
In Java, we saw how the control moves within the loop. Here, how the control is moving?
There is no notion of control at all. So that is the whole point. Okay, you just have definitions. Which will just keep on expand like this. This is all you need to know about. You don't need to know about a notion of control, etc. Okay. Okay. So Chandradeep. So these kind of questions I'll answer later. Okay. So best not to ask about memory exhaustion, etc. right now. We will come to it later. Okay. So I'll move on. Yes. So this is what I wanted to do in today's class. Not get into the slides at all, but it's okay. So we'll see how to run the GHCI, which stands for Glasgow Haskell compiler, interactive version of the compiler. It is what is called an interpreter. Okay, we will see what it is. So you can download and install GHC, as I said. Yes. So the typical way in which you use it is to good. Anek, you will get some extra marks. Thank you. So anyway, so the typical way to use GHCI is to separately write your program in a file with extension .hs. Okay, and then load the function in GHCI. Okay, by saying :load, whatever the name of your file is, and then work on it. Okay, we'll see this. Okay, in a minute. Or you can also write standalone functions which you can compile using what is called GHC. But these functions should have a main function. These programs should have a main function. The main function will typically be something like this is a very simple Haskell program. This is a one-line Haskell program that is self-contained in itself. Okay, you write a program like this and you compile it using something called GHC. I'll illustrate this also in today's class. And it will produce what is called an executable file, which you can run directly. And I will tell you what running means. Okay, you can do all this. We'll mostly be doing our stuff on GSCA, but we'll also look at, I'll ask you to compile and so on. You will have to get comfortable with compiling and running also, but we'll mostly do things that do not require you to write a main, okay? Or if you write a main, it will be some very trivial main. Okay, so I think I'll end the slides because I need to do the GHCA demo at least. We'll try to solve a problem and actually work towards it. Okay. Yes, so I would expect all of you to, I mean, people who are on Linux and Mac would already be comfortable with using the terminal application. For Windows users, you should use the shell. So just if you don't know, I'll arrange for the TAs to have a session with you too, or even I can have a special session with you where we get to the basics. So I have opened a shell, okay, and a terminal app, and here you can have multiple tabs, okay, or multiple windows. I use multiple tabs. Maybe in the interests of this thing, I can have two. I can detach this tab and not make it full screen. Yes. I'll keep, this is one tab for me. That is one window. I can create a new window. I can detach this other thing. Detach this also. Okay, now we have two windows. In fact, actually, I can. Okay, I have two windows now, one here and one there. Okay, I'll switch between the two windows and try to tell you things from time to time. On the right window, I'll do GHCI. Yes, you see something. In fact, I can resize whatever I want. So, okay, so I am in GHCA here. Okay, so so if you have a laptop, etc., you can follow along by just typing stuff in this. So you can use it as just a calculator. So you can just say 2 plus 3. Okay, this is the GHCI. This is the interactive REPL, as they call it, for GHC. For Haskell, you can type Haskell commands and it will give you the answers. Okay, you can type any Haskell command that you want. So 2 plus 3 is a Haskell command. So you are asking it to add 2 and 3. So what else do you want to type? 2 divided by 3, as I mentioned. Yeah, that returns a floating point number. As you can see, it says 0.0.6666 whatever. You can also say div of 2 3. That will give you 0. Div of 5 3 will give you 1, whereas 5 divided by 3 will give you 1.6667. Okay. You can try other things. You can try what else you want to try. You can write whatever, but if it doesn't know what it is, it will say wrong. Okay. You can ask for sine 30. This is wrong. Oh wow, it has a sine function. Okay. Why is it negative?
Sir, it's in radians.
Huh? Oh yeah, 30. I don't know what 30 is. 30 might be in radians or something. At any point of time, if you want information about something, you can say info sine. Okay. Okay. I don't know what the sign means.
So this info command is a Haskell command.
It is not a Haskell command. It's a GHCI command. That is why I put it inside after colon. Okay. This is something that you can. So usually you will write Haskell expressions and it will give you answer. But from time to time, you can ask the interpreter to do some bookkeeping things. Okay, this info is a bookkeeping stuff. Okay, you are asking for information. So anything that is like that, you will put a colon. Okay, there are many other things that you can always ask for help inside GHA. It will tell you what all you can do. Okay, it tells you what all you can do. Okay, lots of things you can do. The colon things, but basically the very first thing that you do is what it calls statement, and it says evaluate/run statement. Okay, that is the thing. So let us write some more complex statements. Let us and then there are various other things. You can set editor, this, that, etc. You notice that I have set my prompt to be lambda. Okay, and if you want to know where I have set this, I will say there is some file. Okay, here I have set various things, including what all modules to automatically load, what my editor is, etc., etc. Okay, here I have set prompt to be this. Later I can send you this thing. You can copy it into your tilde/.gHCI. Okay, on Mac and Linux machines. On Windows, I don't know what the home directory is called. I'll find out and tell you where to copy if you want to copy. Okay.
What is prompt?
Prompt is this thing, this particular thing. You see this, you see this thing, you see the yellow thing. You see the lambda here on the right.
Yeah.
That is the prompt. That tells you that the GHCA is expecting your next command. That is what you prompt. Okay? And notice that here I have written prompt equals lambda / whatever. I could have written whatever else. Okay. Please type your command. You can write whatever, but please make sure that it doesn't clutter up your screen. The more minimal it is, the better. Okay.
Sir.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, but like last time, like the previous tab, whatever you showed, there was a page of commands that are available, right? Like on the thing. Like there was a page with.
Yeah, I said help. Help. Is this what you mean?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I wanted to know how you got.
Colon help. Colon help is one of the first things you can do. Yeah. Okay. So and then okay, and then so if you want to clear your screen on the Mac, I do Command K. On Windows, etc., you will have a way to clear screen, just so that you can see the information more clearly without without clutter. Okay. So I'll go to the left and I'll exit out of this, right? Okay, I'm in this lambda, so I did things like 2 + 3, 2 - 3, etc. Okay, you can do all this. Let us do something. So, okay, at any point of time, you can check the type of. You can say type of 2. Okay, rather than saying it is integer, it is a numeric type. If P is a numeric type, 2 belongs to the numeric type. So sometimes this type information that Haskell gives you, that GHCA gives you, is too general. You might be confused. In which case, what you should do is type plus D for default. Okay, 2. Then it will give you a default type. 2 is integer, it says. Okay. One of the first things you need to learn is that you don't write things like type, info, etc. Instead, it is enough to write the first character. So T. So :T plus D 2 will tell you that it is integer. Okay, :T :I 2 you can ask. Okay, so it says no, I can't give you information about 2 and all, but you can ask information about any other function that you like. Okay, so you can write 2 upper. Okay, it says okay, it is a function that is defined somewhere. It is of type char or char. What it does is to convert a letter from smaller case to uppercase. So for instance, 2 upper small a will give you capital A. 2 upper small z will give you capital Z. Can you guess what it would be to convert the capital A to small a? Somebody?
Too lower.
What happens if I apply 2 lower to small a itself?
That will remain small.
You will get the same thing. Okay. So you will. These are library functions which are already provided to you. They will have some default. What else can you do? You can do, like I said, when you say type of t plus d integer plus c2, it says integer rather than int. Okay, so int is a type with bounds, integer is a type without bounds. What are the bounds for int? You can ask what the bounds are. You can say int dot min bound. Min bound.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
What's the role of plus d there?
Is to give a default type. If you don't do plus d, it will give you a type like this. This is too general a type. Right now, you don't really understand what it means. Okay, it says 2 belongs to any numeric type. That is what it says. Okay, but you might wonder what is a general numeric type, etc., etc. So you're saying give me a default type for 2. Okay, plus similarly you can ask what is the type for plus. Okay, plus is a function which takes any 2 values that belongs to the same numeric type and gives a result of the same type. Okay, but again, this num etc., etc. might be a little too confusing, so you do colon plus d, and then you give plus within parenthesis. So any operator that you use, you can put parenthesis around it and it becomes a function. I'll explain it to you in a minute. So the default types are integer, arrow, integer, arrow. Okay, so you can do 2 plus 3, that's fine, but you can also use it like a function. If it's a function, it should be named first and then only the arguments should be given. So you put plus within parenthesis, that becomes a function name. Then you give 2, 3, you will get 5. Okay, you can do minus as a function name, 2, 3, it will do 2 minus 3. Okay, at the same time, we have something called div, which is a function. Div 2, 5, okay, is 0. Div 4, 7, 3, 2. Okay, but you might feel that it is cumbersome to write div first. Okay, you want to write it like an expression. You can do that. You say 7 div. Okay, within this backtick, as we call it. Okay, this back quote thing, which you will usually find under the tilde on your keyboard. Okay, so you do that and then you say 3. Okay, so this tells you that you can always move from any operator, you can make it into a function by putting parenthesis. Any function, you can make it into any binary function. You can make it into an infix operator, operator that you put in between the arguments by putting these backticks, as they're called. This symbol. Okay, that's a backtick.
Sir.
Okay. Yes.
Does the num data type, does it signify only integers or does it also signify floating points?
It signifies a lot of things. It is, technically speaking, it is not a data type. It is a type class. It is a collection of types. Okay. It covers a lot of types. So which is why I said we need to use colon t all the time to learn stuff. But if it is too general and confusing, you use colon t plus d. Okay, right? So colon t plus d suppresses some information, right? For instance, for plus it says integer, but you can actually do 2 plus 2.5 plus 3.8. Okay, so if you see colon t in general, it will give you the correct type, but it might be too general for you to comprehend. So if you want to understand, you do colon t plus d. Okay, to gain a better understanding. But remember that this is not a complete picture. Okay, because you are defaulting to some types. You can apply it to floats, etc. as well. Okay. Okay. Yes, Srimati and then Harish. Srimati.
Okay. So sir, for when you go from div to like infix function or something, you said,
right.
You put the backslash.
Backtick as it is called.
Backtick. Okay. So, but why don't you do that with plus? I mean, when you put
plus is already no. Plus is already a symbol. You see, plus is a non-character symbol. Okay.
Okay.
Plus is already, as part of your language, it is defined to be infix for convenience.
Okay, right.
So you don't need to do anything extra. But this is just telling you that you can define your own functions, and so the rule is that if it starts with an English character like this, then it is a function which is to be typically done like this. First, I need to change my this. You're able to see this fine, but this background doesn't allow me to. I need to change the style because this background doesn't allow me to highlight stuff properly and make it visible for you. So how do I do that? Yes. Just give me a second. Oh, wow. Yeah, but I don't want it there, so I'm not going to be doing highlighting, etc. Now I can highlight. So if you have, now you can see the highlight, right? Okay. So if your function name, if it starts with a letter, lowercase letter, then you typically use it like this. Okay. But you can define your own functions which are symbols like plus, minus, etc. Other characters, in which case they will automatically be used like this, 2 plus 3. Okay. But you are allowed the flexibility to define something like div and use it in between. Okay. Or define something like plus and use it in the front.
Yes.
Fine. So that's fine. So
I had a question.
Yes.
So you did 2 plus 3.
Yes.
If you put spaces between 2 and plus, would it break it?
No, it won't break it. So white space you can put anytime. So 2 plus 3.
So and can we do backtick, open bracket, plus, close bracket, backtick?
You can try that. It might complain, saying you're doing too much. See, it says you can't do backtick open braces.
Okay.
Okay, good. So let's now till now we've seen
Sir, one thing.
Okay, so integer is something.
Sir, one
can
question.
actually do things like I showed you sum, right? Sum we wrote there. Sum is a built-in function. You can do sum 1 dot dot 10. Okay. Prod is similar. Prod 1 dot dot 10. No, not prod. It's called mult. Product. It's called. Okay. So you see that this is a large number, and I wanted to know what the minimum bound was. Min bound. Yes. So this is the minimum integer that you can have. Minimum int that you can have. Minimum element of type int that you can have. Max bound is this. And let us check what is max bound. 2 to the power 64 minus 1. No. So 2 to the power 32 minus 1. Okay, that is the maximum number you can. No.
So 2 to the power 31 minus 1.
No, but I mean my max bound is this.
63 minus 1.
63 minus 1, that's right. 2 to the power 63 minus 1. Thank you. Yeah, that is this. And your minimum this thing is minus of 2 to the power 64. That is precisely this number. No, 63 again, sorry. Yeah, so your minimum int that you can use is minus 2 power 63. The maximum int that you can use is 2 power 63 minus 1. That is your min bound and max bound. But if I say product of 1 till 100, what is product of 1 dot 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 100? What is it otherwise called?
50500.
No. That is some.
100
What is the product of numbers from 1 to 100?
Factorial. 100 factorial.
Factorial 100, right? So you can write product of 1 dot dot 100. And you see that is giving this large number. So integers are numbers without any bounds. Okay. So Haskell takes care of properly manipulating these things. Okay. So,
then what does the
so you can just
mean
use Haskell as a calculator, if nothing else. Okay. And it offers you nifty functions like this. Yes. Somebody had a question?
Sir, what does the min bound and max bound then indicate?
It is telling you that for int. So if the here I am saying product is this thing. So I can say one list L equals list equals. Inside GLCI, I can also name certain expressions. I'm giving the name list to 1 dot dot 100. And if I can ask what type of list is, it says something complicated. I don't understand right now. So I can say, what is the default type of list? It says integer, okay? But I can force it to have a certain type. I can say list equals 1.100 and put 2 colons and say list int. This forces the list to have type list int. Now if I say type of list, it will say list int. Now if I do product of list, instead of saying product of 1.100, I can just say product of list, because list is 1.100. I'll get a wrong value. No, because I said, yeah, I'll get a 0 value because it goes over the bound. You see, beyond a point, it cannot do any computation. So it says,
but integer includes the 0, right?
Yeah, so that is the significance. So if you use int, it is more efficient, but it has to respect that min bound and max bound. On the other hand, if I had a list prime, by the way, you can use prime, etc. in your names. This quote kind of thing is called prime in mathematics. A prime we call it. Okay, equals 1 dot dot, I don't know, 20 made it work, 15.
So could you explain why it shows 0 once again?
1 second, I'll tell you. Now you get a value. So you get a value if it is small enough so that the product doesn't go over the max bound. So the 0, why it becomes 0 is that if you try the product, actually it is this number, right? At some point of time, you will go beyond the max bound of an integer. I have declared a list to be an integer. So if I take product of integers, I should, if I get products of ints, I should get an output that is int. Okay, but int, you cannot store such a long number inside int. You can only store till max bound. So that is why I told you what the max bound is. As long as you stay within the max bound, it will actually give you a correct value like this.
Okay, sir. So 100, it does not interpret 100 factorial as an integer.
Yeah, it won't automatically interpret it as an integer, etc., etc. It has a list of ints. It should produce an output which is an int. It tries to multiply. At some point, it goes beyond the limits, so it gives 0 by default. Okay, that is the thing. Okay, so till now we have just been doing some things within this semester. Here is a problem that I want to solve. Okay, so consider some number like, I don't know, 12. Okay, is 12 a palindrome? Everybody knows what a palindrome is, right? Does anybody not know what a palindrome is? No. Palindrome is something that reads the same way forwards and backwards. So 11 is a palindrome. Okay, because if whether you read it from left to right or right to left, it is the same number. But 12 is not a palindrome. Okay, so name some simple method to convert 12 to a palindrome. So starting from 12, how can you get a palindrome?
-1.
That is one way to do it. But here is another recipe. Reverse 12 and add it to the original. Reverse of 12 is 21. You add it to the original, you will get 33. 33 is a palindrome. At this point, you can stop. Okay, but let us say something else. 28, let us say. Okay, this is not a palindrome. Reverse of 28 is 82. Okay, so try 28 plus 82. It's 110, which is not a palindrome. What is reverse of 110?
11.
11, which is just 11. Okay, so you can now consider 110 plus 11, it's 121. This is a palindrome because it is the same when you read from left to right or from right to left. Okay, so you stop here. Okay, so here is the task for us. You start from some number and you want to generate a palindrome from that number using this scheme. Okay, and what are the 2 steps in this scheme? One step is to reverse the number. Okay, and then you want to add and then check if the resultant number is a palindrome. Okay, so there are 2 tasks in front of us. One task is checking whether the number is a palindrome. Another task is reversing the number. Okay, at this point, we can actually code all this here itself, but it is easier to go to an editor, write a program separately, then come back and run it in GHCL. Okay, so right now the time is already 4:35. So I have 10 minutes. Maybe I'll go above a little bit, but this is an interesting problem. I'm sorry for taking time to get to this, but I just wanted to carry all of you along. we'll try to, even if it goes a little 10 minutes extra, we'll try to finish this. Don't worry, anyway, I have another meeting at 5. So at least by 4:55, I'll finish. Okay. So with that assurance, let us create a new file. Today is 23, right? 23/9/2021. Okay. So first task for me is to reverse a number. How do you reverse a number? Let us think about it. Or before that, how do you check that a number is palindrome? For that you need to reverse a number. To check whether a number is palindrome, all you need to check is whether the number is equal to its reverse. Okay. So you have to reverse a number anyway. So I'll call it reverse number. This is the function that I want to write. Let me be simple. I'll just say int. It's of type int arrow int. Okay. Now I would like to solicit suggestions from all of you. Reverse num of some n, number n equals. There is one simple case. I'll assume that the number is positive. Okay. Not positive. I'll assume that the number is non-negative, meaning 0, 1, 2, 3, no minus symbol, etc. So what is the simplest case of a palindrome, of reversing a number?
The single digit is always the same.
How do you check whether a number is a single digit? In our case,
It's mod divided by 10 is less than 1.
If n is less than or equal to 9, okay, strictly less than 10, then n. Else. So yeah, so this tells you that first of all, others would have become used. This is like the mathematical case split expression. If this case holds, then my answer is actually this. Otherwise, my answer is this. Okay, and that is a value that you are giving. It's not a statement. So reverse of number, there are two cases. In case when n is less than 10, reverse of n is just n. Otherwise, you will have to do some work. What work do you do? Let us see.
Mod 10 combined with reverse of the rest.
One second. Also. Okay. What do you want to do?
Take mod 10, that gives the last digit, and then like attach it to the back of the reverse of the rest of the number.
Attach it to the back. Attach it to the front of the. Yeah. So basically, all you need to do is take a number, split it into the first, the last digit, and the rest of the digits. How do you get the last digit? Mod 10, as somebody mentioned. How do you get the other digits? Let us fix that also.
Integer division by 10.
Mod 10.
Div 10 mod 10. Okay.
Yeah.
So the div 10, we'll call it quotient. Let us call it quotient. And the mod 10, we'll call it remainder. Okay. So what you need to do is you will have to say that right. But here is a question: where should the remainder after dividing by 10 should come to the front? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So I'll do reverse number of n div 10. Okay. Plus, what do I need to do? I can't just say plus n mod 10 because that will try to add it at the end. It should come to the front. How do I make it come to the front?
You need to know the number of digits, right? So is there like a
I need to
logarithm or
know the number of
something?
digits and multiply it by 10 to the power that. Okay. So I
Yeah.
need to write another function which computes the length.
Sir, we can just multiply 10.
We can
Or I
take
can
the
do
log.
another thing.
Should you have log?
Let us just do the most straightforward thing, which is to do all this. I need to figure out the length of the number of digits in a number. Let me try to do that.
So we can use strings for that instead of
No, let me not use strings. One second. We can actually simply do it. No? Num length. Same this thing. If n is less than 10, then 1. Else 1 plus numlen of n div 10. Is this clear?
Sir, can
Yes,
you
sir.
use log directly?
Yeah, even I was on.
I don't. Log function might be there, but it might not give me number. I'll call it int. I'm trying to get the integer log. Okay, really. Okay, so that is the length. And if I have length that much, then what do I do here? I should do 10 power that, right? R into 10 power the length of, not R. N mod 10 times 10 power num length of,
Numlen minus 1, sir.
okay, num length minus 1 of num length of n minus 1. Okay, this is what we claim should give us reverse of an integer. Okay, let me save this file. Okay, now is the most important command in GHCI. Like we saw colon T, etc. You can say colon load and give the name of the file. The name of the file is 23 followed by something. Oh wow! In the first step itself, it compiles. If there is an error, it will complain about that error. So you have to go back, fix it, and then come back. Don't worry.
We don't have to save this or
so that we'll always have a chance to do that. When you come back, you don't need to again say load 2309 whatever. You can just say reload. Okay, colon reload, or in short colon R. Short for colon load is colon L. Okay, and that will load that. Now I can ask revnum of whatever function we have in mind, 22, 34, 5. Oh, great, it seems to work. Numlen of 22, 34, 5, 5. Yes. So this seems to work. And what about how do you check if a number is a palindrome?
If n equal to revnum of n.
First of all, what is the type of this? Int arrow?
Int to bool.
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 Ispalin of n is n equals reverse num. Okay. Okay. Great. Oh, what happened? Sorry. Did something go wrong? Something did go wrong. I don't know what. Zoom always. Control of that is Ispalin. So I'll come back here. I need to reload, so I'll say reload, or I can just say colon R. That will automatically reload that same file, 2392. If you have to load a different file, you would again say colon L 2109 or whatever. Okay. Now I can check whether 11 is a palindrome. It says true. Is 12 a palindrome? It will say false. Okay, great. So now what was our original problem? You have to ask, you have to take a number, check whether it is a palindrome. If so, stop, print it. Otherwise, you reverse it, add the original number and the reverse and check whether that is a palindrome. Okay. If not, you keep on going, doing the same thing. Okay. Okay. Fine. So I'll call it generate palindrome, starting from a given number.
Sir, we
I
can do
should
one more
actually
thing.
be saying integer for all this. Let me modify this. One second. Let me modify this and make it integer, because I don't know. You might end up getting very large numbers.
Sir, in my program, div is not being recognized. Syntax error div.
Huh? What?
Syntax error div.
Syntax?
Yes, syntax error. Div is not getting recognized in my program.
Did you put a backtick like this?
Oh,
you have to put this backtick, or you said div n10. That is easier for you. You write it like this. I'll modify it for you. You see? Yeah, no need to be fancy here. I'll just say copy this now. That works well. Mod n10. So everywhere I'm just changing it to integer. So what is this procedure? This I'll let you write. Once you write, I'll start with some number n. Okay. If n is a palindrome, then I just return n itself. Okay. Else, what do I do?
N plus reverse of n, revenum of n.
N plus reverse of n, and then what do I do?
Else return
Then call genpalin.
palin of the function. The
Exactly, I'll do it recursively. Else genpalin of n plus reverse. Revenum of. Okay. Great. So that is it. Okay. So now you can test this to your heart's content with various numbers. Okay. So I'll come back here. I'll reload the program. It's reloaded. I'll say genpalin. I'll ask the type of genpalin just to see if it has reloaded properly. No. So
Yeah, so this error only, like every time I declared a function, even like inside GHCI, it gave this error.
no, that is fine. So you say reload. I have not reloaded it properly. Okay, now it does. Okay. Now type genpalin. You'll get a correct. Okay, great. Okay. So now you can test it with various numbers. Genpalin. Well, you'll get that. Genpalin, I don't know, 25, you will get 77. Genpalin, 38. Get 120. Oh, directly you get 121 here. That's fine. 363. So why is that? Yeah, one thing that is missing here is you don't know what the process is, right? You just get the final answer. You don't know how you got the thing. Okay. How can we sort that out? We can sort that out by saying, instead of producing just an integer, we can produce a list of integers. Okay. I'll show you how. I will produce a list of integers. In the base case, if the original number is a palindrome, I will just return a single element list. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll n followed by genpalin n plus revenue. Okay, this colon is telling you form a list with n as the first element and this whatever the next thing I am writing as the rest of the list. That's all. Just the simple modification will now if you now come back here and reload, compile and reload, you can check for the type of genpalin. It's list of integers. So you can say genpalin 38. Yes, 38, 121. Genpalin 39. You see 3 steps. Okay. So genpalin something like 49. You still mostly you get it in 3 steps. 80. Suddenly you see that you have to go along. Okay. So apparently it's an open problem in mathematics, whether in number theory, whether doing this procedure will always terminate. Okay. Whether it will always terminate or not is an open question. Okay. I think people have verified it till some number, but you still don't know the answer completely. Okay. I can try for some random thing and you will see that so here, look at this 89. Already the procedure is so long, right? 89 plus 98 is this. This plus its reverse is this. That is not a palindrome. So again, do that. It is this. That is not a palindrome. It is this, etc., etc. You can retrace these steps. Okay. I'll upload this simple program on the Moodle page. You can download it and you can play around with this. Okay. You can test for any other numbers. I have not been brave enough to test for like some 10,000 and 50.
I didn't got it. What is which one is the question for termination?
This one. If the number is palindrome, just return the singleton list. That is the termination. This part. This part.
Okay, and that is the open problem. Like I didn't get it.
You are asking what is the open problem? The open problem is this thing. How do you know that if you keep on doing this, you will eventually terminate? That the base case will be hit. You are stopping when you arrive at a palindrome. Yeah, the open problem is that you don't know whether you will arrive at a palindrome or following this procedure or not. People have tried it out on various small examples, and it all seems to work out. You will always end somewhere, but it is not known whether people don't know how to prove this for all numbers, or whether it is even true for all numbers. That is the open problem. Okay. So any other questions? I hope I've given you some flavor of Haskell by trying out this problem. With admittedly, I've introduced certain things that are not yet. I mean, I've used certain things that are not yet rigorously introduced. But I hope you get a flavor of how to do things with Haskell. Simple things. You see that the programs are reasonably concise. Okay. We'll see how to make this program, even though it is concise, the reverse of a number, it is still a little wasteful. We'll see how to make it more efficient, etc. in later classes. Okay. But yeah, so I just wanted to give you a flavor of all this and how the GHC works and GHCI works. GHC I have not shown you it. For now, it is enough to know GHCI. We'll come back and do later. We'll do GHC, and you should tell me if you find this kind of having two terminals open with this is okay for you, or if I should go to VS Code or whatever. So I'll have a poll on this thing. So again, on
is there a way to
itself, perhaps
comment here?
Yes.
Is there a way to comment in Haskell?
Yes, there is a way to comment in Haskell. Yes, very good question. You put 2 hyphens at the start of a line. That's a comment. Okay. So there are 2 ways. Okay, to comment. You can either say, one second. Let me go here. Okay, these are 2 ways of commenting. Yeah, each line you can put hyphen, or you can put brace hyphen and then write whatever and then put. Okay. Of course, even in a single line you can put. Okay, that's also. Okay, good. I think so. If there are any questions you can ask. Otherwise, we can close with this. We'll meet on. I'll try to reschedule this to 2 p.m. on Tuesday. I'll update the Moodle page, etc., etc. I'll also update the Zoom thing. Then we can meet at 2 p.m. from. Okay.
So, can you help with writing the code in Windows? I mean, for Haskell.
Yes. So what I'll do is I'll talk to the TAs if they can have some session with you. I'll ask them to write to you. Yeah. They can organize a session, and whoever wants it, they can have a session which helps you with Windows and also any basic computer science questions that you might have. Is that okay? Yeah.
Sure, sir.
So as soon as possible, I'll ask them to do that. Okay. Fine.
So is Haskell cranky about its indentation, or is it not? Is Haskell very strict about indentation?
Yes, it is strict about indentation, but it is not too difficult. Okay, so if you use a proper editor like VS Code, it will automatically take care of indentation. You don't need to worry about it. Okay?
Sir, we'll be learning syntax, right? Like this is what syntax is.
Yeah, this is what syntax is. Syntax means what are permissible, what kind of can I write colon here? Where should I write square bracket? Where should I write parentheses, etc.
So we'll be learning this. Like we'll be learning this, right?
Yeah.
We'll be learning this, right?
Yeah, we'll be learning all this. In fact, yeah. So there aren't too many rules really. As we do programs like this, we'll be learning what is the most natural way to do this. Okay. Best way to learn syntax is to see somebody else's programs, copy them, try out your own with mild variations of that. Let the compiler throw errors at you, then you will figure out from those errors how to do it. Okay. But don't worry. So we will be learning on this. Okay. So today was just supposed to be a session which exposes you to GHCI how to use this, some sample, just to give you a flavor of Haskell. We will be going through the slides, which will introduce things to you properly. Okay, and then we'll. Okay, good. If there are no more questions, then I think I'll stop this. Okay, and I'll talk to the TAs about a session which explains basic installation questions, basic computer questions, etc. Okay. Okay, thanks then. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
sure,
you,
sure.
sir.
You don't need to be so formal and chat me at the end. Everyone. Good. So have a nice weekend. Yeah, see you. So 2 people are not okay with moving it to 2 p.m. Why is it so? If you're still around, can you tell me why? Is there a clash? Who are those 2 people?
So in the group chat, they were saying that they have their lunch at that time.
Oh, they have lunch at that time. That is why. But 2 p.m. is also a scheduled class time, so it's fine. As long as there is no clash, I think we can. In fact, even I will have a struggle with lunch because I have to finish a class, cook, and then eat, and then have a class. But I think it is okay. I think if it is only lunch that is a problem, they can have lunch while attending class. It's okay. I'm not demanding that you should keep the videos open. Okay. We'll figure out something. Okay, fine. So, yeah. Okay, great. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.